In British Columbia, there's no legal requirement for mining companies to negotiate with First Nations. It's optional. This means that mining companies can stake claims, explore for minerals, and even build a mine without any negotiations with people who live in the affected communities. When you consider these negotiations are mandatory in other places like Nunavut, the Yukon, Australia, New Zealand, and the Philippines. Now you might be thinking that you'd heard the BC government had a duty to consult First Nations regarding mining. While this is true, we believe it's not enough, and it deprives the community of direct input. That's because there is no legal requirement for mining companies to negotiate agreements with First Nations. It's important to note that most mining companies in BC do approach First Nations to engage in negotiations. However, when mining activity has already begun, it complicates any negotiation and can lead to misunderstandings. Nevertheless, for First Nations, negotiations present an important opportunity to have their concerns heard and considered. To start, preliminary agreements should set out common rules and a process for the parties to follow during further negotiations. Consultation agreements set out the procedure for consultation and the protocols for communication. These are followed by negotiation agreements, which set out clear terms of understanding for deciding what will be negotiated, who will negotiate, and how negotiations will proceed. Preliminary agreements also include memorandums of understanding, access agreements, and exploration agreements. These may include things like a plan for how often the mining company will update the First Nation, or a pledge that the mining company will respect cultural heritage, as well as commitments to hire local First Nations people. The more substantive agreements that lock down obligations and expectations are called accommodation agreements. Now, these can be between the government and the First Nation, or between the mining companies and the First Nation. These agreements usually include financial compensation. They are designed to fulfill the constitutional right to accommodate Aboriginal communities. These agreements include the Impact Benefit Agreement, Participation Agreement, and Strategic Engagement Agreement. These agreements set out the terms and conditions for the development, production, and operation of the mine. The common topics in these agreements include business and employment opportunities, community development programs, training and education programs.